Hey, Eagle fans, it's EaglefanKarl. This is going to be my preview and I guess prediction of the Eagles' last regular season game of the year against the Dallas Cowboys. And I say I guess prediction because these games are so hard to really do any sort of analysis on, because you really don't know how teams are going to play these kind of games when it's really meaningless for both of these teams. At the beginning of the season, I actually thought this game was going to mean something. I thought this game was going to be for the division title when I had sort of looked at all the teams in the division, all our schedules, and sort of did a quick WL. I thought that the Eagles and Cowboys were going to be right there at the top of the division, both, 9-7, 10-6 sort of thing. So they'd be competing for the division title, that this game would be for the division title, with probably the other team not even making the playoffs. That kind of a scenario, it probably would have gotten flexed to a Sunday night game. But now the game is pretty much meaningless, and that's great for Eagles fans because it means we're in the playoffs and the Cowboys aren't. So the question really is, who's even going to play for the Eagles? Doug Peterson said in his midweek press conference that he's going to sort of do it by feel. The only thing we know for certain is that Brandon Graham is not going to play. He's been ruled out with his ankle, and frankly, that's probably not a bad thing. I think if this were actually a meaningful game, he'd probably be playing, but there's no reason to risk getting him hurt more, so it's probably better off just sitting him and not having to worry about it. But when Doug says he's going to do it by feel, my guess is what that means is, he's going to play the starters. That much is clear. He says the starters are going to play, especially Nick Foles. My guess is for the offense, the starting offense will play. And as soon as they look good, he's probably going to take them out. Sort of like if you remember in the third preseason game, I think we scored a very early drive and we ended up not even playing the whole half. Playing our starters the whole half. So I kind of think that's probably what's going to happen in this game, is that if you see an early series where Foles takes the team down and they score a touchdown, that will be the end of the game for them and they won't play anymore. Now, I think that's a mistake if they do that. I'd prefer to see Foles and the offense play the whole first half. The reason I say that is because if you recall during the Raiders game, we scored a very early drive in that. Our one offensive touchdown was scored on a very early drive, and then it was the rest of the game he struggled. So if that's sort of the benchmark you're going to go off of, that's not really going to be indicative of how he's going to play the whole game. So I think you really need to get a whole half of action in there. Anybody can have one drive where they complete a few passes. Really what the real test is how they're doing over an extended period of time in a game. And as a result, I'd like to see Foles play the whole first half and really get a lot more reps under his belt and get a lot more reps with the whole first team offense, so that going into the postseason, we know he's gotten that with the team. So I'd prefer to see the starting offense play the whole first half and give him some extended reps with the team in real game action, because I think the Cowboys will probably be playing quite a few of their starters. I'll get to Dallas in a second, but the other thing that this game could mean is the first appearance of Sidney Jones, our second-round draft pick, in this game. If you didn't know, there was an issue of whether or not he could play because they were going to have to create a roster spot for him. But yesterday, the Eagles placed Joe Walker on IR. That does free up a roster spot. The Eagles haven't made another move yet. My guess is going to be they will activate Sidney Jones to the full 53-man roster, which would then allow him to play in tomorrow's game. So that'll be interesting to see him get his first real game action, first NFL action at all, for that matter. He was a guy coming out of college before the injury. I liked him as a first-round selection for the Eagles. The fact we got him in the second round, I know a lot of people were questioning that and really wondering if that was a smart thing. I thought it was a really good idea long-term for the Eagles, but it sort of hurt us this year in our secondary. So we'll see if this is the first steps in really making and solidifying a defensive secondary that could be good for several years with some of the pieces that they now have in place. But when you're looking at a game like this and the prediction, then, you don't really know what the Eagles are going to do because they've got nothing to play for. They've got everything to play for in terms of keeping their guys safe. So it's not necessarily going to be probably, a full game of starters. So the real question then is going to be, when you're looking at a prediction for a game like this, how does the other team play, and so exactly what Dallas Cowboys team are we going to get during this game? And it's kind of interesting because this is really the flipped scenario from last year. Last year, of course, the Cowboys came into this last game, once again, playing the Cowboys in the last game of the season. They had the first round bye and the number one seed locked up just like we do this year. Whereas we were the team that was out of the playoffs, this year they're the team that's out of the playoffs. So it's a completely flipped scenario from last year. But there are a few key differences in terms of what happened in that game versus what could potentially happen in tomorrow's game. The first thing that's very different in these games is the team that's out of playoff contention. So last year that was the Eagles. This year it's the Cowboys. Last year we were out of contention, but we were playing at home. So we had our hometown fans to play for. This year it's just the opposite. The Cowboys are the team that's out of it, and they're the team that is no longer in contention, but they're playing on the road. So they really don't have their hometown crowd to play for in that instance. So that's one very different thing. The other very different thing is sort of the psyche of the team coming into it. The Eagles had been eliminated. I think maybe they had only been technically eliminated for 2 weeks before this game, but really for the last quarter of the season, the Eagles pretty much knew they weren't going to make the playoffs. And so those last 2 games ended up sort of being a bit of a momentum builder into this season, where we beat the Giants in the second to last game, and then we came out and we beat the Cowboys in the last game. So it was sort of a momentum builder. We had already moved on past the fact that we weren't going to make the playoffs, and really were just playing for some pride. The Cowboys were just eliminated last week, so they might have a little bit of a hangover from that, and it could do one of two things. It could make them really hungry because they're upset they got knocked out last week and they want to prove something, or the other side of it is they could be flat because they've got nothing left to play for anymore, and it's just sort of is going to be, they're going to be going through the motions because they now are eliminated, and it's going to be difficult for them to really get up for this game. And then the other thing that's really different about this game, the Eagles were really coming together as a team for those last few games. They had that stretch, towards in the third quarter of the season last year where things were falling apart horribly. There was a couple games where people were really questioning whether or not the team was quitting, and they sort of got themselves back to where they were playing good football again. So they had sort of rallied around each other and really were playing well as a team and as a unit. So they had that going for them. Whereas in this case, it's just the opposite for the Cowboys. There's been a lot of internal strife. There's been some issues between Dak Prescott and Des Bryant going after last week's game. I'm sure you probably have some resentment that some of the players have towards Ezekiel Elliott for getting himself suspended, and that really sort of killed any momentum they had during the middle of this season. So I think there's a lot of things that were sort of going on from an internal strife standpoint that the Cowboys have going into this game that the Eagles didn't have last year. Now, once again, that could do one of two things. It could mean that this team is going to quit on each other and they have nothing to play for, or it could be sort of their rallying cry. Hey, nobody respects us. They think we're lousy. They think that we're done, and that we don't like each other. Let's prove them all wrong. So once again, that could go either way. So it's really difficult to say exactly what's going to happen with the Cowboys. So how do you even predict a game like this? You'll notice that I haven't talked anything about stats in this game in terms of where these teams rank in offense and defense and passing offense and defense and rushing offense and defense and all the things that I normally talk about. Because this game, you really can't do that for a game like this, because the Eagles are probably only going to play their starters for maybe a half. If that. They might even play him less than that. So you're going to probably have a whole second half where you're playing Nate Sudfeld and as your quarterback. So it's really sort of difficult to say exactly what's going to happen in this game. And, like I said, how the Cowboys respond to some of the things that have been happening to them recently, that's really a 50-50 shot. So it's really sort of difficult to determine how this game is going to go, and making a prediction in this game is sort of ridiculous. So the only way I figured out how to do it is I think we just have to use a random number generator and just use chance and see what happens with that. So what I did is I went ahead and downloaded a random number generator on my iPad, and we're going to find out exactly what the score of tomorrow's game is going to be, or at least what my prediction, according to this random number generator. So what I did is I went ahead and set this to do a number between 0 and 40. 40 was the most points the Cowboys scored this season. The Eagles scored over 40 in 2 occasions, but those were sort of outlier games. So I figured 0 to 40 is probably a pretty safe bet. So we're going to go ahead and do this. So the first number is going to be the Eagles score. See what we get. 33 points for the Eagles. And the next score we'll have will be for the Cowboys, and that will be 34. So I guess my prediction for a score is going to be Cowboys 34, Eagles 33. There you have it. Those are some of my thoughts. Like I said, sort of a hard game to predict exactly how it's going to go down. I really doubt there's going to be that much scoring going on in tomorrow's game, but hey, you never know. Let me know in the comments below what you think. What's your prediction for tomorrow's game? How much would you like to see the starters play in this game? Are you more like me, where you'd like to see them play a good half of football and see exactly where we stand going into the playoffs? Or are you more in line with probably what Doug Peterson's thinking, I'm guessing, where he'll probably only play the starters and as long as they look good, and then he'll probably get them out right away. That's my guess as to what will happen. Leave your comments below. Let me know exactly how long you think the starters should play. Let me know what you think the score is going to be of the game. Let me know if you think I'm nuts for using a random number generator to figure out what my prediction for this game is going to be. I'll go ahead and check in after the game. Probably I'll try and post a video on Monday morning. Can also give me the opportunity then to talk a little bit more about the NFC East playoff picture as we go into it, because by that point, all the seeds will have been determined, and get a better idea of maybe where we stand going into the playoffs and exactly who we could potentially match up with in that divisional round playoff game. So I'll check in again on Monday morning with some thoughts about the game, but also probably more looking ahead to the playoffs. Until then, fly Eagles fly.